Google is finally back in the race with the launch of 3.5 Flash this week at the Google I/O conference of 2026. I've honestly got some pretty mixed feelings about it. Gemini 3.5 Flash is Google's newest fast Flash model, which historically is their fastest and most efficient lineup in their models. But we need to have a talk about whether or not it's actually as efficient as it used to be. What's interesting is that the model is being positioned as the strongest agentic coding model that they have. I mean, if you look at the benchmarks, it's literally benchmarking above Gemini 3.1 Pro, which literally 3 months ago was their flagship model, and this isn't even the Pro model, this is the fast model. So this is interesting because you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I mean, you have the fast model, and it's performing better than the one that thinks longer and takes more time. So it's like, sounds a little bit too good to be true, right? It has fast speed, it has low latency, and it's allegedly cheaper in real world practice for coding and agentic work. And I mean, to be fair, the model is great. The speed is there. The coding is actually pretty good from some of my tests, and the quality is definitely there. But my issue is that if the point of the Flash model is to be as fast and efficient as possible, then why did Google make the model so token hungry? I mean, it's quite expensive for a Flash model. And we're gonna get into the math of how expensive it is because right now the AI community is a little bit divided on how they feel about this model. But before we start, if you want to stay updated with all things AI, that is literally the name of this channel, All Things AI. So make sure you guys subscribe below. So technically this thing is very impressive. It's able to plan and reason across a very large code base very well. And obviously Gemini is pretty known for having large context windows, and it's the same for this model. It's also doing a pretty good job at deploying sub-agents to handle long tasks over a long horizon. So as you can see on the screen right now, it's actually outperforming Gemini 3.1 Pro in pretty much every single benchmark, including agentic and coding benchmarks. As you can see here on Terminal Bench 2.1, they scored 76.2%. It also hit 1,656 ELO on GDP Val AA, and that's essentially an index which measures real-world economically valuable agent tasks. Now, a big reason for this push is Google's new Anti-Gravity 2.0 platform. They basically built this desktop app, which is supposed to be an agent-first development harness, where you can spin up specialized sub-agents and then protect them inside of a sandbox and just let them run wild. And because Gemini 3.5 Flash is spinning up 280 tokens per second, which is roughly 4 times faster than every single frontier model that we know, the people who are using it inside of anti-gravity are calling it a revelation because of how fast it is. And I mean, I've seen so many people talking about how they're getting so much shit done on anti-gravity because of how fast it is, and it's their new go-to model, I guess. It's just exceptionally fast. But here's where the reality check sort of comes in, unfortunately. Gemini 3.5 Flash is costing around $1.50 per 1 million input tokens and $9 per 1 million output tokens. I mean, on paper that sounds fine, but if you look at the intelligence index from artificial analysis, that is over 5 times more expensive than the Gemini 3 Flash model. And that's around 74% more expensive than Gemini 3.1 Pro in real world examples. So how does a cheaper model cost more? That's because it takes around 49 turns per task. And that's pretty much the highest recorded turn rate in history. It beats Claude Opus 4.7, which is around 45 turns, and GPT 5.5 is around 40. In my personal opinion, the most interesting part about this is the cost to performance from artificial analysis chart. Because for example, if you run a standard benchmark, the GPT 5.5 medium uses around 22 million tokens, which is around $1,200. Now, if you compare that to Gemini 3.5 Flash doing the exact same thing, it is around 73 million tokens. Now that is a drastic jump in token usage. And because of that, it costs around $1,552 to run that exact same benchmark. So basically 3.5 Flash is much more expensive in the real world, but it also benchmarks slightly higher than GPT 5.5 in that specific comparison. And unfortunately, it's also very token hungry, so it drains your wallet a lot faster than most of these other models. If you deep dive and do a little bit more research, you're able to really discover why it's so token hungry. The main weakness of Gemini 3.5 Flash is that it gets very over ambitious. It doesn't really just code like a small, fast model. It thinks in massive systems. And sometimes you don't want it to do that with a Flash model. You just wanted to do a simple thing, right? And you know, a lot of programmers are noticing that it's blowing past the API limits in Google Anti-Gravity because it just frankly does a lot more than what it's asked. I mean, I read a developer was talking about how he went in and asked Gemini 3.5 Flash to fix a very, very simple bug, and Gemini 3.5 Flash decided to go and rewrite a large part of his code base, and doing so reintegrated a lot of new bugs, which he then had to go fix himself because it got overly ambitious. I mean, the code was already working perfectly fine. There was just a tiny bug. It over-engineers. to say the least. And that's why it takes 49 turns and 73 million tokens. It's super fast and it's surprisingly smart, but it can lead to a truncation in massive projects where it tries to take the lead and just burns through a ton of tokens. Then there's the broader sentiment in the AI community, which is just exhaustion. The model of the week pace is getting ridiculous. That's just putting it bluntly. I mean, at this point, we're spending so much time looking at release notes instead of actually building something. In fact, a lot of developers are just saying that they don't really care about the tiny, minute differences in percentage points on, leaderboards, and they just do what works for them. They just want a model or an agent that doesn't get stuck in a loop when they just want to do a basic agentic task. But obviously, we can't end this video off without talking about the good things. Because despite the model being super hungry for tokens and over-engineering, there are still some upsides to it, of course. I mean, I have to give credit where it's due. When I look at my own benchmarks using Gemini 3.5 for vibe coding, I noticed that the front-end design was actually very good for the price and the speed. It also has some very good SVG art, and as well as working in 3.js, it's very good. Like, you can see this example where it was prompted to generate a Windows clone, and I mean, it's obviously a very intelligent model. Overall, I'd say it's a solid release from Google, considering all things. I'm just personally not a Gemini fan, I guess. It's funny because I used to be for a very long time, and I had Gemini for 2 years, and I was a diehard fan. And then I recently switched to GPT once they released the 5.5 model. I fell in love, and I also love the new GPT Image 2 as well. But we're gonna see who wins this race in the end. So far, Google is trying their best to come back in the big leagues, but it hasn't won my sentiment just yet, I guess. Suffice to say, if you are using Google, you are getting the best bang for your buck for the most part because of the rate limits in general and the price. Only thing is that you obviously have to be careful and you have to make sure you're managing it so it doesn't write an entire new code base for a simple prompt. All I know is I'm very excited to see what Gemini 3.5 Pro is like in the next month when it's going to be released. I'm going to definitely make another video on that, and I'm very excited to see what they do with it. So lastly, where you can access Gemini 3.5 Flash, you can currently access it in their app or through an API. You can test it out completely for free right now as we speak. Just, type in Gemini in the browser and you'll find it. But anyways, if you want to stay up to date with all things AI, again, that's the name of the channel, and I promise that I will do that for you. Have a good day.